What's up, guys? My name is Zach, and today I am driving a 1966 Oldsmobile Toronado. Up front is a 7.5 liter V8, and down below is a 3-speed automatic transmission. Now, I am super excited to be driving this Toronado for two reasons. First of all, I love driving older 60s cars. This was way before my time, and I like to expand my knowledge and learn about cars of the past. And so this is most certainly one of the most prolific ones. But the second reason is the fact that this was the first mass-produced American front-wheel drive car. I know that's a mouthful, and there were front-wheel drive American cars before this, like the Cord, which this car takes heavy design influence from. But on a mass-produced level, this really ushered in the front-wheel drive era here in the United States that we still are seeing today. So, very, very cool piece of history that I get to drive around and show you today. But if you would like to share your piece of history with me, you can head on over to my website, zackpradel.com/submit. It's a quick and easy submission form. It takes under a minute to fill out, and I come out to you. But let's get back to that 455 V8 under the hood. Well, some of you eagle-eyed viewers or Oldsmobile fans might be screaming at your computer or phone right now. The original engine that came in these was a 425 cubic inch V8. This vehicle has had a 442 V8 swapped into it because unfortunately the old engine went kaput after a block of metal on the highway punctured the oil pan, pushing it into the pickup tube, and it created a whole mess. So this has a little bit beefier of an engine than what would have been found from the factory, just so you're aware. Like I said, paired to it is a 3-speed automatic. However, it plays in with the front wheel drive because the whole transmission is in the engine bay. The bell housing connects to the engine block the same way any transmission would, but then it sort of swoops around and goes to the front wheels, which is very, very interesting and weird. The 3-speed hasn't been giving me much trouble. It shifts a little hard, but this particular car has a shift kit on it, so I can't really give a good assessment of the stock transmission. I'm moving forward, and that's all that matters. Last but not least about the drivetrain, this is front wheel drive, which back in the 1960s was not common at all. Now, into the 70s, we saw Cadillac actually switching over to front-wheel drive. We got those big Eldorados, like the Eldorado Barrettes that I drove last fall. And those are wonderful vehicles, and front-wheel drive had fully been ushered back in. But back in 66, not quite the case. And so, that was a big piece of technology coming from Oldsmobile, which we'll talk about towards the end of the video. How does it feel to drive the Toronado? Honestly, it drives like pretty much every other 60s car that I've driven. It's big, it's floaty, the steering is vague, the throttle is hesitant, but once you get into it, this engine is making supposedly around over 400 horsepower, and so it does move. This is not a slow car, but everything was a lot bigger in the 60s. The sky was, quite frankly, the limit, and you feel that while driving this car. It almost feels like no one can stop you, I guess except for a piece of metal on the highway and an oil pan. But with that out of the way, let's talk about the interior. Well, in front of me is an absolute cluster of things. Everything is in front of me. So I have a speedometer directly in front of me. Off to the left, I have fuel and coolant temperature, as well as my heating and ventilation options, my fan speed medium and low, my lights and my wipers, and a climate vent. And off to the right of the steering wheel, I have my oil pressure, my amperage clock, my Oldsmobile radio, my transistor radio, love that it says that, my music dial, of which I can actually adjust the bass, and then my speaker dial for front and rear. Down below that, we have the electric antenna and our courtesy lights, as well as the ignition switch and 2 added gauges just to keep an eye on everything. All of this is right in front of the driver, and then nothing else in front of the passenger. The rest of the interior is absolutely barren, and so this whole car is very oddly displaced. All of the engine and mechanicals are up front. All of the dials and radio and climate are in front of the driver. Very, very strange. On the door, I do actually get power windows. Love to see that. I get a really cool Toronado badge on either door. And what's something really cool is that this is a coupe that does have back seats, and we'll get to that later on. But I actually have a second handle on the door for the rear seat occupant. That is very, very cool to see, and I haven't seen that on a car before. Moving into the center, I have 2 climate vents, but like I said, nothing found in the center. Tons of leg space, but obviously no cup holders because it is the 1960s. And so it fails the big friggin' bottle test just based off of that. I do get a bench seat with lap belts, and the lap belts were optional in 1966, and these particular lap belts are Fisher lap belts. So Fisher was a coach builder that worked with GM all throughout the 1900s. And so these were Fisher specific, or you could get Oldsmobile ones, or you didn't have to get any seat belts at all. A very, very cool little piece of history, but the seats are decently comfortable. They do work as part of the suspension. They are a little bit bouncy, but that's exactly what you want in a vehicle like this. And so it's par for the course, and you love to see it. However, speaking of seats, we do have back seats. So let's go do a back seat review. Ugh, this door, as I close my leg in the door. And who said YouTubing isn't a dangerous job? Once we are back here, put the seat back up. I, of course, have ashtrays on either side, because why wouldn't I? No headrest here, so I get a very clear vision out the front. I do have power windows back here. Very cool to see that. And I do get speakers behind the rear seat. Overall, me being a 5'11", not small guy, I fit back here really well, actually, and I'm kind of surprised at that. I guess, no, I'm not actually surprised. The 60s cars were great, even in the coupes. I just sit in a lot of like 90s and 2000s cars back seats, and I'm just like, you know, cramped in, whatever. This is actually nice. I could ride back here all day and not sweat a thing, and that's a beautiful, beautiful thing to have. No seat belts, by the way, just so you know. I get to actually use this rear handle. That's exciting, because we're gonna hop out and talk about the trunk. Oh, not a lot of leverage on that. I'm gonna be real with you. Come on, nope. That'll saw a kid's leg off. Come on. Come on, find one of the detents. There it is. We're out, baby. All right, so around the back of the Toronado. Little keyhole there. Pop it up like that. And there we have the trunk. Giant Oldsmobile mat that is unfortunately split in half. However, that is the trunk of an Oldsmobile Toronado. Nothing too crazy, but this is old style American trunks where you could fit a family of 5 safely and comfortably in the trunk. And that's what I absolutely love. So really, really cool to see that. Again, love that Oldsmobile mat, even though it is cracked. And there it is. It's the trunk of the Oldsmobile. Now we gotta talk about the looks. And not only do I love this 60s gold color, I think this is one of the coolest colors of the decade, but I just also love the styling. I love the big front grille. I love the swoopingness of the rear window. I just think that this is a really, really cool looking car. And I can't imagine being back in 1966 with the pop-up headlights, the front wheel drive. I mean, this must have felt like an absolute spaceship to those who bought them. And that is a really, really cool feeling just based off of the looks. I could stare at this thing all day and see something new or a new angle, and I would be a happy, happy boy. But now, with all of that being said, let's get on to my final thoughts. What do I think driving the Oldsmobile Toronado from 1966? Well, it's cool. I like driving 60s cars. Always have, always will. It's an awesome history lesson. Yada, yada, yada. It's a little floaty. It's a little boaty. It's not the fastest thing on God's green earth, but it's quick. Sure. All of that out of the way. The biggest thing that sticks in my head while driving this car, and I'm sure when I get out of it later today, was that Oldsmobile used to be cool. Oldsmobile used to be awesome. And I know you might be screaming at your computer again, saying, Zach, we knew this. We know. I'm 26 years old. The only Oldsmobiles I grew up next to were the Aleros that weren't amazing and the Auroras. But even then, by the time I got to the age of driving, Oldsmobiles were pretty much off the road. This isn't my era, and so you can't blame someone for not knowing what they don't know. My point being, this car pioneered front-wheel drive tech in America. It was one of the first. Not the first, but one of the first to mass produce it. They had to perfect it. This car was quick, and the engine technology that Oldsmobile was producing at the time was right up at the top. You know, they were just coming off the Rocket V8, the engine that absolutely dominated and changed NASCAR forever. And so driving this car, yes, it's cool, but what it feels like is seeing old, grainy, black and white photographs of your grandparents when they were young, and they're smiling and laughing, and they're going to the beach or getting milkshakes. And you have that thought in your head where you're like, I never knew that grandma and grandpa were like cool and did anything besides cook Italian food, and watch football. All right, maybe that's personal to my grandparents. Love you, Mike and Grace. But it is sort of an awakening moment. I'm learning history while driving this car. And Oldsmobile wasn't always stuffy and boring. Oldsmobile wasn't always destined to be canceled by GM. They had life at one point. And this car is living proof of it. They were fun, they were interesting, and they were top of their class. So today I want to celebrate not just Oldsmobile's cars, but all of the engineers, all of the men and women that worked on these projects, that figured this stuff out, that said, hey, we want to make a front-wheel drive car. Let's figure out how to do that. They made this vehicle possible. And so for that, I want to say thank you. I also owe a huge thank you to Justin. I've reviewed his vehicles in the past, but I was so excited to drive one of these. This Toronado is just so cool. Justin is so lovely to work with. I also got to meet his cousin Ryan today, who's fantastic as well. Both awesome, lovely gents, and I can't thank them enough. This has been a wonderful experience, and Justin is one of the best. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to rate the video, comment on the video, and subscribe if you really liked it. Take care, guys.